Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking around for this episode commemorating the 50th anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. We're here now with Darren Muljo, who has personal ties to that ship. So you have all of these artifacts that your family has collected. Can you explain more? What is your tie to the ship?
Well, my grandfather, Ransom Edward Cundy, was a 1941 graduate of Lake Linden High School. And he went on to serve in World War II as a Marine and fought in the Battle of Iwo Jima. And he took up sailing shortly after he came back from the war and spent about 30 years sailing the Great Lakes on many different ships, the last one being the Edmund Fitzgerald as a watchman. The collection that we're looking at here, my ma is no longer here, Cheryl Rosman, well known in this region, interviewed so many times because of her father having perished that night. But she has an unbelievable collection, and it's been sitting in a basement far too long, and just wanted to share it with people so they can understand her commitment to the memory of my grandfather and his crew members.
I mean, obviously, being a family member, having a family on board, I can understand the significance and the importance of wanting to keep his legacy alive. But was there another reason for collecting all of these too? I mean, why dedicate so much time and energy to this subject, to this ship?
Well, you know, when it sank on November 10th, 1975, you know, the families never had closure.
Yeah.
And we lived vicariously. I was 5 years old, so I have a singular memory of my grandfather. But my mother, she collected stuff. We only got our news through what you're looking at here is a newspaper article from November 11th, 1975. She collected articles, artifacts, magazines, and then later interviewed tremendously with your own station and Sonia Crispin and others to bring about the story of the men, but also to eventually have the ship's bell raised as a permanent memorial at Whitefish Point, and then seek legislative act to protect the gravesite of the men, and I'm sure we can talk about that later as well.
Yeah, we definitely can.
Yeah, Darren, I mean, you have a lot of artifacts here. Is there anything here that was collected that you tend to gravitate towards that really sticks out to you a lot as you go back and reminisce on this time?
Yeah, you know, the newspaper articles are significant. You know, I don't know how many are out there still in circulation. This 50-year-old article I got my hand on, of course, protected by a plastic sheet. You know, but over the years, my mom had tremendous correspondence. This whole box right here is actually communication with Reverend Ingalls from Mariners Church in Detroit. And, you know, the significance of Reverend Ingalls is he presided at the time of the sinking, you know, over at Mariners Church. And he went the following day after hearing that the ship had sank and rang the bell 29 times. That ends up in newspaper in Toronto. Gordon Lightfoot catches wind of it and has a brainstorm idea to write the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. So a singular moment of Reverend Ingalls, who later became a very deep personal family friend and assisted with the families in consecrating the gravesite, eventually on board the Coast Guard cutter Mackinac on July 17, 1999. Probably the first and only time that a gravesite that's in the ocean or in Lake Superior has had a church consecration service. And this is a book about Mariners Church. It was published in 2001, and boy, did they do a fantastic job in talking about how the families got together in unison, sought protection, but first they had consecration, and Reverend Ingalls was such a big part of that. And I'll actually be attending their services coming Sunday.
Oh, that is very cool. That's very cool. We have a magazine article open to this page. I want to show this off as well. And if you look closely, you can see a diver bringing a beer into the ship. Can you explain this story behind this?
Yeah, it's true. On July 4th, 1995, the Edmund Fitzgerald's bell was raised, and that was through the Great Lakes Shipwreck Historical Society. The families in unison supported that mission and convinced Canada to allow for a dive to do just that. It rests in Canadian waters, so we had to get their approval. You know, things went all the way to Jean Christine and Bill Clinton, and Bart Stupak was a huge supporter in that effort. But the Canadian naval ship Cormorant sailed onto the Great Lakes. The families were on a yacht called the Northlander, and along with the Shipwreck Society, the dive took place to recover the bell. But on the final day of the dives, after the bell had been brought up to the surface, which I might add, when it came up and came out of the water of Lake Superior, actually chimed. So the voice of the men was heard, and that bell rang for the first time since the night that it sank. And it was a tremendous feeling for those that were present. But the next day, they brought a replica bell, and they lowered it into the place where they had raised the ship's bell the day before. And as part of that last dive, Bruce Foucault and others on board the naval ship Cormorant asked my mother, is there anything significant that we can do for you on this last dive? And my mom just threw it out there and said, hey, my dad, Ransom Cundy, always enjoyed a cold beer. So they actually placed a can of Alexander Keith IPA, which is significant in my family. I have not tried it. I would love to. And they brought it down 500 feet below the surface. And after the replica bell was placed, Bruce Foucault powered himself around in the newt suit, which you're looking at, and placed that can of Alexander Keith inside the pilot house of the Edmund Fitzgerald on July 5th, 1995.
What a classic Youper request. I'll take a can of beer.
Well, my grandfather was from Lake Linden. My mother lived in Gwin. We have very deep connections still in the Copper Country and all over. And the Lake Superior holds a special place, I think, for our family, and especially the mariners that continue to sail on it as well.
I just love that story of bringing a beer down to one of the watchmen.
Yeah, when he said that, that definitely made me laugh, for sure.
We're going to continue that conversation. We'll hear more from Darren about his family's mission to continue this legacy when we return.